Rajani, you have the text. Can you read?
Yes, Rangadhar.
Okay, go ahead. And Suki will read next.
Yes.
Shilpa is
This
not.
something. Yes, Rangadhar. Shilpa will not be joining today. She has left.
Yeah, that's it.
This something is, as Vedanta insists, and as we have throughout insisted, in its manifest nature, Sachidanand, a trinity of absolute existence, consciousness, and bliss. It is from this primal truth that we must start in approaching the problem, and it is evident then that the solution must be found in an action of consciousness manifesting itself as knowledge and yet limiting that knowledge in such a way as to create the phenomena of the ignorance. And since the ignorance is a phenomenon of the dynamic action of force of consciousness, not an essential fact, but a creation, a consequence of that action, it is this force aspect of consciousness that it will be fruitful to consider. Absolute consciousness is in its nature absolute power. The nature of Chit is Shakti. Force or Shakti concentrated and energized for cognition or for action in a releasing power effective or creative, the power of conscious being dwelling upon itself and bringing out, as it were, by the heat of its incubation, the seed and development of all that is within it, or to use a language convenient to our minds, of all its truths and potentialities, has created the universe. There is a footnote, I'm reading that.
Yeah.
It's talking of the heat of its incubation.
Yeah.
Tapas means literally heat. Afterwards, any kind of energism, ascesis, austerity of conscious force, acting upon itself or its object. The world was created by tapas in the form, says the ancient image of an egg, which being broken again by tapas, heat of incubation of conscious force, the Purusha emerged, soul in nature, like a bird from the egg. It may be observed that the usual translation of the word tapasya in English books, penance, is quite misleading. The idea of penance entered rarely into the austerities practiced by Indian ascetics. Nor was mortification of the body the essence even of the most severe and self-afflicting austerities. The aim was rather an overpassing of the hold of the bodily nature on the consciousness, or else a supernormal energizing of the consciousness and will to gain some spiritual or other object. I come back to the text.
Yeah.
If we examine our own consciousness, we shall see that his power of its energy applying itself to its object is really the most positive dynamic force it has. By that, it arrives at all its knowledge and its action and its creation. But for us, there are two objects on which the dynamism within can act: ourselves, the internal world, and others, whether creatures or things, the external world around us. To Sachidanand, this distinction with its effective and operative consequences does not apply in the same way as for us, because all is himself and within himself, and there is no such division as we make by the limitations of our mind. Secondly, in us, only a part of the force of our being is identified with our voluntary action, with our will engaged in mental or other activity. The rest is, to our surface, mental awareness, involuntary in its action or subconscient or superconscient. And from this division also, a great number of important practical consequences emerge. But in Sachidanand, this division too and its consequences do not apply. Since all is his one indivisible self, and all action and result are movements of his one indivisible will, his consciousness force in dynamic operation. Tapas is the nature of action of his consciousness as of ours, but it is the integral tapas of an integral consciousness in an indivisible existence.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting para. We'll have to look at it very carefully. First of all, let's get the context. So for that, I will read the summary of what you said earlier. Okay? The problem is the problem of ignorance. How come that we are starting from the Advaita philosophy that there is everything is only the divine? If everything is divine, and our conception of the divine is that he is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, how can there be something which is the opposite of omniscience? How can there be something which is the opposite of omnipresence? You don't see him. And how is it then omnipotent, full power? But I don't see the power anywhere. So there is a problem. The problem has to be solved. Now, what he said earlier, okay, I'm just saying, this is my language. Out of nothingness, an infinite full of potentialities, anything can emerge. So there are two types of nothingnesses. One is the Buddhism nothingness, in which really there is nothing. And the other nothingness is, it is full of subtle potentialities, but there are no features. It is like water which is absolutely transparent and still, and yet there is something in it, but you can't describe what it is. Yeah? This is the nothingness. Out of the nothingness, the positive nothingness, an infinite full of potentialities, anything can emerge, and there is no saying what will arise and what cannot. If there is no the knowledge is not there. Okay, so practically, it is chaos that could emerge from the non-existence. This also we can explain another way. If only power is there, it can create. There is a power to create. But what it is creating, there is no knowledge. Therefore, it could be chaos. That's what Symbolic is saying. Okay? Practically, it is chaos. But if there is knowledge, if there is intention, if there is a purpose, I am creating this because I want this, then that implies consciousness. So both have to be necessary. So consciousness as well as force. So this is what is slowly coming to. Then he's saying, which one is going to create the ignorance? Is it consciousness or is it force? Finally, what the paragraph we read today is telling you that we shall have to look at force. Okay, that seems to be more likely to give us the clue to the solution of the problem of ignorance. Nothing can emerge. So practically, it's a chaos that could emerge from the non-existence. And out of this chaos, this world would have manifested by a fortuitous accident, by chance. It has happened. That's what the materialists claim. Happy or unhappy, according to one's experience and attitude. But man's view of this matter could only be a reaction of the senses. So we can judge only by our senses. And so there we could say that there is no order in the universe. Okay, that's what the materialist says. Now,
Sangata, we are reading a summary of before that para, no?
yes. I am reading out the summary of the previous para. Then we are going to do today. Okay, so
okay.
Out of chaos, paradoxes, contraries, absurdities could be born, and it is asserted by some that the world is really so. Okay? There are many who say the world is a delirium, it's an error, a madhouse, okay? Existentialism, etc. Okay? They all have this idea that the world is full of contradictions, but you can do nothing about it. So just accept it quietly. So this is one theory. But this theory is based on only sense knowledge. Okay, that's the whole problem. Okay. Just 1 second. Yeah. So I read further. This. So if the world is really so, is it really what they are saying? There is a madhouse, there is so many contradictions. If the world is really so, then it must have come from not consciousness and knowledge, but from inconscience. So now we're going slowly step by step. So at the highest level, there is only consciousness and knowledge, consciousness and force. So it couldn't be that. So it has to be from inconscience. The first conclusion. And ignorance, from inconscience and ignorance. So, okay, let me be a little more specific. What Sridhar is saying is, if you, like the materialists, think that the world is a contradiction and there are all sorts of things which make no sense, then you have to agree that it is coming from inconscience. And that's what they say. Okay? The materialist says that matter is the origin of everything. From matter has come life by chance, and from life has come mind. But it's all products of matter, and so inconscience. So this tallies. Okay, that's their view, and they can hold on to it. But Sridhar is going to tell us that the real creation is not from the inconscience, but from the superconscious. He's going to slowly come to that. He's examining all the possibilities, seeing what is possible, and eliminating them one by one. So, anything can be true in such a world of a materialistic origin. Okay, our thinking mind may only be a disease, okay, because it's coming from matter. Just as there is health also, there can be disease. All diseases are also coming from the lower, okay, a mechanical force or inconscient matter. Even the laws and the order that we see in the world could be only mechanical and ignorant, and you find that they are mechanical. Okay, this is the argument, and not the laws of a self-evolving, fully conscious self. Continuous existence of the world would be the phenomenon of eternal nihil, an infinite ignorance from nihil, if you think that that's the origin of everything. In that case, all opinions would be equally valid or indeed equally invalid. What he's saying is, it depends on the starting point. If you are a materialist, yes, then the world is a contradiction, full of all contradictions, and it's a madhouse. You are justified in thinking that if you think that matter is the origin of everything. But like the others, the Buddhistic idea that it is coming from the nihil, okay, then again it will hold, or it may not hold, provided you change your hypothesis, provided you change your starting point. So our starting point is Advaita. Everything is a divine. Okay. So we cannot accept the materialistic idea or the Buddhistic idea. Okay. So this is eliminating one by one all those things. Seeing whether they are valid in a certain sense. They are valid. Okay. In fact, the human mind has voiced all these opinions. Madhouse, delirium, existentialism, absurd existence, meaningless world, all these ideas have been spoken of at some time or other. But they are valid or invalid depending on the starting point. But even such views have their use and profit. How? Negatively, by destroying opposite errors, and positively, by preparing new theories. However, taken to extreme limits, this way of thinking leads to the meaninglessness of existence and the worthlessness of all philosophical and spiritual aims. So, spiritual philosophy seeks for knowledge and not chaos. And this unknowable must be something that, in the Upanishadic words, being known, all is known. In other words, yasmin vidyate sarvam vidyatam. So this is what spiritual knowledge is seeking, not materialistic science. The unknowable must then be not unknowable, but unknowable to mortal mind, but not to consciousness. Consciousness can know it. Let us recall that whatever exists in the universe is knowable to man. This is the theory that we started from. He is a microcosm of the macrocosm. If you remember the chapter, Vedantic methods of knowledge. So there he says that the knowledge of the whole is contained in the knowledge of the atom. I'm changing the words a little bit, but that's what he's saying. So the knowledge of the universe is contained in the knowledge of the human heart. So instead of going like science out into the universe to look with your senses, go into yourself, and that is yoga. So if you go into yourself and you know the essence of everything and you know the origin of everything, then everything can be known. This is the observation. Okay. So finally, there ought to be not an unknowable, but a something that explains all the mysteries and paradoxes of the universe. If you say just there are paradoxes and you're not satisfied, but those who are very keen to satisfy themselves will not be satisfied with this materialistic conclusion. So you have to change your premise, you have to change your hypothesis. So finally, there ought to be not an unknowable, but a something that explains all the mysteries and paradoxes of the universe. It is a something that we must discover and make it the basis of all our thinking and conclusions. Okay? And seeking for the thinking and seeking for the unknowable. Just 1 second. The source of all things. Just give me 2 seconds. So this something that we are looking for, this is what he's talking about in this para now. Okay? There's something that will explain everything fully. That's what Symbolic is saying. Alright? So now we start looking at the sentences. This something, what it is. So Vedanta is telling you what this something is. Okay? Because they have experienced it. And you can accept or not accept. But if you accept, your faith will be justified. If you don't accept, you will have to go on searching for yourself. And if your search is sincere, yes, you will find it. But when something is already there given to you, why don't we use it? Okay, just like as they use the phrase, reinventing the wheel. Okay? The wheel has already been invented long ago, so you don't need to spend your energy in reinventing the wheel. Just like in science also, all the textbooks are there. Whatever collective humanity has already got, we don't need to look at it. So similarly, if you're looking for spiritual knowledge, it's already there. Everybody has discovered. You can go further if you want. And you can deny also if you want. But then you will have to go a long way. Okay? You will have to go a long way. Now, I'm reading the first sentence. This something is, as Vedanta insists, and as we have throughout insisted, in its manifest nature, Satchidananda. Because there is an unmanifest nature also. The divine can be unmanifest, actually. But when he is manifesting himself, it appears, takes the shape and form of Sat Chit Ananda. A trinity, a threefoldness of absolute existence, consciousness and bliss. Existence, he uses the word, I've told you many times, but we have to see very carefully. Existence is the subtlest of substance. It's a substance which is very, very so subtle that it has the capacity to produce anything it wants. Okay? So, and he uses the word substance, which is slightly more gross than existence. And use of the third word, matter, is the grossest of substance. So existence is subtle substance. Okay. Then, or if you go from the downwards, matter is grossest substance. Okay. Substance is subtler matter, and finally the subtlest matter and the subtlest substance is existence. So that is existence. Absolute existence, absolute consciousness, and absolute bliss. Absolute means nothing else is there, only that. There is no mixture of any sort. It is from this primal truth that we must start in approaching the problem. So instead of approaching the problem like the Buddhists and the materialists do, that matter is creating everything, let us start from looking at consciousness and bliss. That's what he said. Then we are more likely to find a solution. Solution to what? Solution of ignorance. Okay? Avidya. It is from this primal truth that we must start in approaching the problem. And it is evident then that the solution is found in an action of consciousness manifesting itself as knowledge. Complete consciousness, absolute consciousness is manifesting itself. And when it manifests itself, we have seen many times, there is a diminution, there is a lessening. Okay? It becomes less and less because it will take a form. Infinite consciousness cannot have a form because it is infinite. So it has to have a finite form. Therefore, there is knowledge in different grades. That's what Symbolic is saying. Okay? Manifesting itself as knowledge. More knowledge, less knowledge, absolutely no knowledge at all at the bottom. Okay? Graded. And yet, limiting that knowledge in such a way as to create the phenomenon of the ignorance. So, this is what is happening. It is consciousness that is creating the world, but it is creating in such a way that ignorance also is being created. And since ignorance is a phenomenon of the dynamic action of force of consciousness, not an essential fact, but a creation, a consequence of that action, it is this force aspect of consciousness that it will be fruitful to consider. Now, let's look at the words carefully. Okay? So, first of all, phenomenon. What is phenomenon? Any event that has a starting point and an ending point. That's a phenomenon. Okay? So, everything in the physical world you can see is phenomenon. That's why the world is phenomenal. Okay? But the opposite is what? Essential. And here they use the word creation. So, we go to that next one. Phenomenon of the dynamic action of force of consciousness. Now look at the word again, dynamic. Force can be non-dynamic. It can be static. Okay, force can just be static. Okay? Just like the electricity, when you don't switch it on, it's not acting. But the moment you switch on, it's got an action. So dynamic action means when it is active and creating. Okay? Force can remain without creation as in the nirvana experience. Force is there, but it is not acting. Or the water behind the dam. That is also force, but it is not acting. But Sridhar is saying, for manifestation in the world, the force has to be dynamic. Okay? It has to have an effect. Dynamic action of force of consciousness. Not an essential fact, but a creation. Now look at that. Essential fact is that which is forever. Essential is eternal, infinite. But creation is not eternal. It's a phenomenon. It is created and ends. And what is created must end. Okay? In the physical world. The world itself is eternal. But all the forms in them are creations. And therefore, they will end. Okay? That is why it is phenomenon. A consequence of that action, it is this force aspect of consciousness that it will be fruitful to consider. So, because consciousness can be static, but force is creating. So therefore, we'll have a look at force. That's what he's saying. Let's analyze this force of consciousness. Okay, clear. We go step by step. First of all, he has taken all the other theories. Matter is producing life and world, and that he says is not satisfactory. Then he comes to the Buddhist state. They are all not satisfying. Then you come finally to the premise, the hypothesis that he is starting with. And that is the Vedanta and the Advaita. Satchidananda is the source of everything. So let's look at force of action. Absolute consciousness is in its nature absolute power. That is at the highest level. Okay? At the highest level of the unmanifest. Okay? Absolute consciousness is necessarily absolute power. But the power there is static. Okay? It's not creating. But when it comes one step down in the supermind, it starts creating. Because it becomes dynamic. The nature of Chit is Shakti. Okay? Consciousness force, Chit Shakti. Force or Shakti, concentrated and energized for cognition or for action in a realizing power of effective or creative, okay, power of conscious being dwelling upon itself and bringing out, as it were, by the heat of its incubation. Just now we have read the paragraph, and that it really needs a little bit of thinking over. Okay? Well, how does the world get created? It gets created exactly like the process of incubation. Okay? First of all, there is the eggs, but that egg has not yet manifested the bird. So it has to be, you have to sit on it and give it heat for incubation. That's what all the birds do. They sit on the egg and give it heat. Then it incubates. Okay, then it gives the form. So in everything in the physical world also is like that. If you want to create something, you have to concentrate. And concentration, what is it? It's a contraction. And when you contract something, heat is produced. This is something very obvious. When you contract something, heat is produced. We know that. You experiment and see also it will be. So when you are heating something also, there is a purification also that takes place. Okay? So, just like as I told you, the iron ore being heated, okay, the slag comes out on one side and the iron ore comes out pure on another side. So tapasya, tapas, okay, he's using the word tapas later on, he will explain. So for creation, you need to concentrate, give heat. Okay? When you concentrate, heat is automatically generated. So this is why he's using a very interesting phrase, incubation. Incubation is all birds that incubate their eggs. Okay, okay, let's, because it's quite a big footnote, so we'll look at the footnote. Okay, it's very interesting what he's saying. So let's have a look carefully. Tapas means literally heat. Okay, but from there the word tapasya has come, and tapasya is often very misunderstood by those who don't know about yoga. They say tapasya means, standing on one leg, okay, and praying to God, or not eating for 25 days. This is tapasya, okay, what you call austerity. But it is not austerity at all. It is just production of heat, tapas, okay. So, means literally heat. Afterwards, any kind of energism. So, first of all, the heat can be non-dynamic. But when it becomes dynamic, same is calling it energism. Okay, it becomes ascesis. Ascesis is the its origin is Greek. It means also tapasya. Okay, it means concentration. Concentration gives you heat. Austerity of conscious force acting upon itself or its object. When a scientist is concentrating on how to make a mobile, he is concentrating his mental force on the purpose which is doing the object. But a yogi is doing it upon himself because he wants to produce, out of his own being, he wants to produce something. Okay? So that's why we are including both. Both are tapasya. All inventors, they do tapasya. Okay? So the world was created by tapas in the form, says the ancient image of an egg. That's why they call it Brahmanda. Okay? The Brahmanda is the unmanifest. And by heat, by concentration, it produces the world. The world was created by tapas in the form, says the ancient image of an egg, which being broken again by tapas, heat of incubation of conscious force, the Purusha emerged. Purusha is the consciousness, soul in nature, like a bird from the egg. It may be observed that the usual translation of the word tapasya in English books, penance, is quite misleading. Penance is exactly as I said, torturing yourself to achieve certain things. Okay? You deny yourself food or you deny yourself rest. Okay? All this type of thing. Penance. It's a negative connotation. Okay? Tapasya is the positive connotation. It's quite misleading. The idea of penance entered rarely into the austerities practiced by Indian ascetics. This really is talking about the actual Indian ascetics. But you know, we have symbolic stories where the tapasya is shown as, we know the story of Prahlad, no? He is standing on one leg and practicing tapasya. But that is not the idea of tapasya at all in the actual field of yoga. Okay, that's not it. These are all symbolic acts, symbolic images. Nor was mortification of the body. So as I said, mortification of the body, torture in the body. Not eating, standing on one leg, not sleeping, okay, denying yourself food and action, all these type of things, mortification of the body, making it suffer. The essence even of the most severe and self-lifting, okay, austerities. So if you do concentration, it is enough of a tapasya. So people resort to this tapasya. Oh, God will be very happy if I do this. These are all idiotic ideas. They are not the idea of them. Nor was mortification of the body the essence even of the most severe and self-afflicting austerities. The aim was rather an overpassing of the hold of the bodily nature on the consciousness. Say, if you are doing tapasya, the proper way, there is a suffering because they are not used to that sort of concentration. So you shift the area of concentration and make it bodily. So that's a wrong extension. It should not be done. You can concentrate only with you can do tapasya only with your consciousness and not the body, not necessary. The aim was rather an overpassing of the hold of the bodily nature on the consciousness, or else a supernormal energizing of the consciousness and will to gain some spiritual or other object. Not only spiritual, but concentration can give you also success in other fields. That's what is. So it is clear now. The tapasya, even the divine, is concentrating all his consciousness on goals and creating the goal. And when a yogi does that also, that's exactly what happens. When he's concentrating in mental energies or his vital energies, he's actually producing heat in himself. And when he's producing heat, there's a purification that takes place. And if the purification of your Aadhar is ready, then naturally the higher consciousness will come in. Okay? Because, as we say again, nature abhors a vacuum. The moment you are pure and all your impurities have gone away, then the higher forces will come in. But higher forces, pure forces cannot come in when there is impurity. So it does not. So you have to remove the impurities, and that will be do by tapasya. Tapasya creates heat. Heat produces purity. Okay, it purifies you. Heat always. Okay? So this is what you say. Now I come back to the main text.
Vedanta,
Yeah, tell me.
what is the Aadhar?
Oh, Aadhar is your body, mind, life. Okay. Your Aadhar is the body, mind, life. What contains, it's the vessel. Okay. Your vessel is the body, mind, life. And what is in the vessel? Satchidananda, or if you want, the consciousness is in the vessel. Okay. That's what is meant by Aadhar. You have to purify the body, mind, life. The container. The divine is there in your container is the body, mind, life. It's a threefold container. There is a physical container, there is a vital container, and there is a mental container. The containers are all very, very phenomenal. They are transient. They are given to you for one life. Next life you will be given another container. Okay? That's what it says. Okay, so now I come back to the text. This incubation, the seed and development of all, of all that is within it, or to use a language convenient to our minds, of all truths and potentialities. So all the potentialities which are there in you, just like the bird in the egg, okay? By heat, the bird will come out. Exactly in the same way, when you do concentration of force, of consciousness and force in yourself, the bird which will come out. That's why often the soul is often pictured as a bird. And that bird is usually the swan or even the peacock. Okay? So these are the symbols used. When your pure nature manifests itself, it's like a bird. If we examine our own consciousness, we shall see that this power of its energy applying itself to its object is really the most positive dynamic force it has. It's there even at the most ordinary level. When I'm trying to understand something, I have to concentrate. And that concentration gives you the power to penetrate into whatever you want to do. Consciousness has got three powers. Consciousness has got the power to get any knowledge. Consciousness has got the power to get anything you want. And concentration, consciousness has also got the capacity to become what it wants. Okay? So these are the powers. And all these powers, by concentration, the consciousness can achieve anything it wants. But it has to concentrate. A diluted, roaming, and distracted consciousness will get you nothing. It has to be concentrated. To Satchidananda, dynamism within our act, ourselves are eternal. I'll read that sentence again. But for us, there are two objects. No, I have to read the earlier one. If we examine our own consciousness, we shall see that this power of its energy applying itself to its object is really the most positive dynamic force it has. By that, it arrives at all its knowledge and its action and its creation. But for us, there are two objects on which the dynamism within can act. Ourselves, the internal world, and others, whether creatures or things, the external world around us. We can use the power of concentration for two things, internally and externally. Science is using it externally. To Satchidananda, this distinction with its effective and operative consequences does not apply in the same way as for us. Why? Because Satchidananda it knows itself. It is perfect. So it doesn't need concentration. That's why it is static. Okay? So, to Satchidananda, this distinction with its effective and operative consequences does not apply in the same way as for us. Because we are in movement and we have to, where our consciousness is distracted. It's all diluted and distracted, going outwards. Because all is himself and within himself. And there is no such division as we make by the limitations of our mind. That's the difference between us and Satchidananda. Secondly, in us, only a part of the force of our being is identified without voluntary action. Part of the force of voluntary action. With our will engaged in mental or other activity, the rest is our surface mental awareness. It's a surface mental awareness. Involuntary in its action or subconscious and superconscious. So, the force that is there in us at the higher level or the lower level is involuntary. All our actions are voluntary. Okay, that's what he's saying. Okay, in its action or subconscious and superconscious. And from this division also, a great number of important practical consequences emerge. But in Satchidananda, this division too and its consequences do not apply because there is no division there. Since all is one indivisible self and all action and result are movements of his one indivisible will. Indivisible, there is only oneness there. There is no distraction at all. So it does not apply. In other words, there is no ignorance there at all. That's what he's saying. His consciousness goes in dynamic operation. Tapasya is the nature of action of his consciousness and as of ours. But it is the integral tapas of an integral consciousness in an indivisible existence. This is what he's saying. So, tapas there is static perhaps. That's what he's saying. Tapas, the nature of action is a consciousness as of ours, but it is an integral tapas, full of an integral consciousness and integral indivisible existence. Whereas for us, it is in a divisible existence and it is not at all integral. Therefore, we have to concentrate. So, we'll stop here today. And the next is, but here a question may arise. This is tomorrow, we'll do this. Okay, so basically, to cut short this long discussion, concentration creates. Concentration of consciousness and force creates. This is the main thing. And we can see that also, even this solar energy that comes. If the solar energy is not tapped, then it does not do anything much. Of course, it is necessary for plants, but it's a very slow action. But if I put a huge solar dish, okay, I can get so much energy that I can use it for cooking all my meals or even using it for other purposes. Okay, so I can use it for any other purpose. I can create different types of the heat that is produced by the solar energy in the huge dish as in the Oracle's kitchen. Okay, they can use it for cooking on purpose, or you can boil water with it, and the boiling water will also run a turbine. So you can change the action. The energy zone can be changed from one level to another level. Heat can become electricity. Electricity can become mechanical action. So this is what Shanghai says. So tomorrow we'll look at this one. But here a question may arise. What that question is, we'll see tomorrow. Okay? Okay. Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Rangada.
We have discussed it, but you have to concentrate and reread and see and understand what we are saying. But ultimately, we have to understand ourselves.
Thank you, Rangada.
Okay, au revoir, everybody.